If it's happening inside your head, I guarantee it's happening in the world around you. Driven Mofos, welcome back to The Underestimated Entrepreneur. Before we get started, huge shout out to all of those who have been connecting with me on Instagram. It's been absolutely awesome. I've just been absolutely smashing out content and putting some really cool stuff out there to help people this year with their exercise, with their fitness, with their mindset. And it's just been awesome to connect with so many of you on there. So thank you very much to all of those who have been following along, who have been liking my stuff, and also who have been shooting me messages as well, especially about the stuff that's helping. Like, I only know, what you guys need if you let me know. So thank you to everyone who's been doing that. Anyway, let's get into something I really wanted to talk about today, and that's called the law of correspondence. Now, this here is an ancient principle. There was a book called The Kabbalion. It is about ancient Hermetic teachings. I've studied a lot of different philosophies and philosophers and that throughout the years. And this law keeps popping up. And it's becoming more of sort of modern day psychology, I guess you could say coaching. But what it states is that the external world is a direct reflection of your internal world. And so what you see on the outside of yourself is what is also going on in your mind. Now, yesterday I was working with a client. Now, this client had built a multi-million-dollar business within 9 months, so he was crushing it. But he had a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, a lot of weight on his shoulders, as you do when you grow a company that quick, hence why he's been working with me. And the cool thing was that he was smart enough to realize that he needed to get on top of his mindset. But what was happening was he was experiencing growth problems in his business with his team. And what I stated was that the law of correspondence states that what happens on the inside is reflected on the outside, that life is a mirror. You get to see your thoughts and emotions happening around you. So if you think that the world's a scary place, the world is a scary place. If you think that you can't trust people, you'll have people always around you that you can't trust. Now, scientifically, this may be true. It may be, some people say that's the law of attraction. Maybe. Okay, but we got to remember, if you've listened to my episodes before, a positive charge attracts a negative charge in chemistry, in physics, and in a lot of the hard sciences. So if you're positive, then that makes no sense because it will normally attract a negative charge. Now, it might be trying to balance you out. Maybe that's what's happening. But there's also something in the brain called the reticular activating system. And this system looks for what we perceive. So maybe it has to do more with how our brain is wired to find something called similars and differences. And so when we see things that are similar, we go, I know that. So if you think the world's a bad place, maybe it's the reticular activating system or a part of the brain that then locks onto that and goes, this is familiar. This makes me feel comfortable, even if it's uncomfortable. But at least you feel certain, you feel like you know the world around you. Because if things changed all the time, you'd freak the fuck out. So by having things that are consistent with what we believe, maybe it's part of the mechanism to make us feel safe and as though the world is partially okay because we're familiar with it. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just familiarity. But what does this have to do with you? Well, if you look at the world around you and you say, I can't trust people, it's not that you can't trust people. It's just that you believe you can't trust people. And that's the law of correspondence at play. If you believe that it's hard to make money, then it probably is hard to make money, and I assume that you struggle financially. If you say relationships are always a struggle, they're always hard, then that's probably going to be the case. Now, there are so many mechanisms that could be at play here that are causing you to think that way, to reinforce it. There's also another mechanism that is well known in the field of psychology, which is that we have something called a confirmation bias, that if we believe something's true, we tend to confirm it and we disconfirm things that we don't believe is true. I'll give you an example. If someone says, I believe in God, and you have someone else who's an atheist and they come along and they say, well, I don't believe in God, you're wrong. The person who believes in God doesn't just go, you know what? That's valid. Good point. I don't believe in God anymore. That's not what happens. That person reestablishes their confirmation bias and says, well, I believe in God because of all of these beliefs, all of these reasons. So they have reasonings for their beliefs. And then they'll create something called a disconfirmation bias, which disconfirms anything that challenges their beliefs. So some people say things like, it's dangerous to be out at night. Now you can say to them, well, I don't believe that. I go out all the time and nothing's ever happened to me. And they go, yeah, but what about X, Y, Z? They're going to reconfirm it. You'll know this because if you've ever been in an argument with your partner, you might have a stance, a point that you're trying to make. They say, no, I don't agree with you. And then the next second you start arguing about it and you keep disconfirming each other. but you keep reconfirming what you believe. What I know is that there seems to be these mechanisms in our brain that reconfirm what we believe to be true, the stories that we keep telling ourselves, which are all triggered by the perceptions that we create. And so if we change the perception, we not only change the world that we perceive, but we change the way we feel about the world. And if we change the way we feel about the world, we change the way we act in the world. Because actions are driven from emotions, and emotions are driven from thoughts or perceptions or beliefs. So if we change the thought, we change the emotion, we change the action. Now, actions reinforce the thinking. So if you act a certain way, it will remind you of the thought, which then triggers the emotion, which then triggers the behavior. And this is how people get caught in loops. And sometimes you'll hear people say, well, I'm an addict. What they're saying is, I think the same way all the time, which makes me feel the same way. And when I feel the same way, I act the same way. And if I keep doing that in destructive ways, then that is called an addiction. Sometimes it can just be called a self-sabotage pattern. Sometimes it's called a habit. Now we have habits that benefit us and habits that don't. But if we're aware of our external world, and this is what I said to the client yesterday, I was talking to him and we were in a coaching session. And I said, look, tell me about your team. And he said, well, they just fuck things up all the time. They're always erratic. They seem to be stressed out. They don't follow through on things. They sort of half-ass jobs. And I said, well, where do you do that? And he said, I never do that at work. And I said, that's not the question, motherfucker. Okay. The question was, where do you do it? And he went, oh, well, I guess I do it with my health. I've been slipping with my health a lot. I keep committing to things and not following through. And I went, cool. Same as your staff. And he goes, shit. Yep. And I said, cool. Where are you irresponsible? And he goes, well, there are plenty of times that I say that I'm going to do something and I don't follow through on it. So that's irresponsible. I said last weekend I was going to do a whole bunch of stuff like clean the cars, get the house organized, and I didn't do that. That's irresponsible. I said, cool, what else? And he said, I blame them when things go wrong. And I said, cool, what do they do? And he said, well, they blame everybody else when things go wrong as well. And so I blame them for being irresponsible. And I'm like, cool, can you see how irresponsible you're being and how you blame them, but they blame everybody else? I'm like, they're just a direct reflection of you. If you use the world as a mirror, you see yourself better, which means you can change faster and you can evolve more. So instead of blaming the world, trying to change the world, change yourself relative to the world. And the more that you do that, the faster you're going to evolve, the faster you're going to get better results, the faster you're going to change things around you. That's why human behavior and mindset is one of the greatest things that you can do. I believe it's the greatest investment a person will make. Right? I spent $1 million on personal development and personal growth and coaches and all that sort of stuff before I made my first million. And the more I tapped into this sort of stuff, the more money I made. And then every year since, I've made millions every year, year upon year upon year upon year, because I invested in that. And I still invest in it because I know that if I'm stressed, I'm going to act a certain way. And when I act a certain way, I'm going to get a certain bunch of results. If I believe that there's not enough money, I'm going to rock up to the business anxious, frustrated, trying to cut corners, rushing to get shit done. Then the team are reactive. And then now my whole life is in fucking chaos because I have a belief about the world and about business. So I realized this a long time ago, that if I change the way that I think, I change my results and I change the world that I perceive. Anyway, Driven Mofos, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I really do hope that you think about the world as a mirror, that you sit there and you look at the things around you, the things that frustrate you, the things that stress you out, and ask yourself really good, high quality questions and find out where you do exactly the same thing, to the same level, to the same extent, maybe just in a different area. Maybe you're really driven in business, but maybe you're not driven in the area of family. And you might be calling other people lazy, but maybe you're lazy in certain areas of your life. When you see that, you'll be able to make changes more effectively. So just use the world as a mirror around you. Anyway, Driven Mofos, take care, have a great day. And once again, thank you to all those who keep rating and reviewing this podcast. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. And thanks for sharing this as well. I've noticed a fair few of you have been sharing this podcast on your social media platforms. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great day. Keep kicking ass. And remember, keep your standards high, stay disciplined. Most people waste their life, and I just don't want you to be one of them.